Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the QUADRISE Fuels International PLC presentation update following its closed AGM. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type your question and press send. Due to the number of pre-submitted questions and attendees today, the company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, it will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. These will be available via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Mike Kirk, Chairman, Jason Mars, CEO, and the Board of QUADRISE Fuels International PLC. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Welcome to everyone, and I'm sorry that this year you're seeing us through this mechanism rather than face-to-face as we would normally do. The formal business of the AGM has actually finished and the results of that have just been announced by RNS. But it's a great pleasure both to welcome you today. We're going to give you a short presentation as normal because we believe that absolutely most of you will be reasonably familiar with the company. We're not going to show our normal video in terms of the animation, which we believe gives a very good overview. We want to be able to cut straight to being able to give you that update and then entering into the Q&A. And again, can I just reassure everyone that it is just standard practice that the normal meeting schedules that are put in via Investor Meet Company are 1 hour, because it's modelled on what would typically happen in an institutional investor presentation, which are 1 hour slots. This will not close after 1 hour. We will go on until we've answered the vast majority of questions, or we're not getting any more sort of materially new questions. And anything that does not get answered, we will actually submit the answers to that post the meeting, and those will then be published on Investor Meet Company. So I think with that, we'll actually go into the presentation. I'll take you through the initial part of that. Then Jason will go through the meat of the update in terms of the projects. We'll come back with a brief summary, and then we will go into the Q&A session. Just as a very brief overview, you know, the problem that QUADRISE solves is actually that we've got some significant oversupply in the market. Producers and refiners make too much heavy oil, and the recent IMO 2020 regulations have actually significantly reduced demand for that product. On top of that, it's actually uneconomic for most producers to actually produce heavy fuel oil because they're selling it at a discount to the crude that they buy and produce through their refinery, and the diluents that are used for blending are not being able to be sold at a premium. They're being sold at a discount. It's also a very difficult fuel to generally burn and handle and use. It consumes energy, it's polluting, and it produces particularly harmful emissions to do with particulates. But it is a very large market opportunity that we're facing, with around $135 billion of heavy fuel oil sold annually. How do we solve that issue? Well, it's quite simple in practice, but actually very difficult to do in actual practical terms. But we're the company that can do this. Instead of using those very expensive diluents, we use waters, some additives that we get from our long-term technology partner, Nourion, and use that to create a fuel oil which has got the viscosity which enables it to flow. It saves those refinery distillates, providing cheaper energy to consumers. And because it burns much more like a gas, it's much cleaner to use with very low particulates and actually a significant reduction in NOx because of the water. Just in terms of the global opportunities now, Jason is going to take you through the next part of this slide, which will give you an overview of how we access these and then give you the update on the particular projects that we're working on at the moment. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Mike. So we access the market obviously through a number of different partners. We've obviously displayed the slide before, so this is an area where this has been very useful this year in terms of accessing some of the markets that we weren't able to travel to. Obviously, some of the markets really require us to actually see our customers occasionally. We've had to adjust and adapt very quickly. to a new world, a new pandemic paradigm. But yes, so we've utilised some of these partners, and I guess we'll go through how effective that's been as part of this business development update. In terms of the key projects that we'll focus on today, we'll talk about Morocco with our mining and chemicals client. We'll talk about Utah together with Greenfield Energy, which is a JV between Valcor and Tomco. We'll talk about Ecuador, Saudi Arabia, marine fuel, and then we'll finish with some information about our new sustainable solution, which will be launched very soon. So the mining group in Morocco, this is basically a fuel oil replacement opportunity, as you've heard before, with multiple sites in Morocco. They use fuel oil for various different drying applications and steam raising. We signed an agreement just about this time last year, and the original plan was to get the pilot trial underway at the end of towards the end of Q1 of this year, which was delayed, as you all know. We had everything there on site ready to go, but unfortunately were unable to travel there, and the site became locked down, which made it very tricky to get anything done. We agreed with the client very soon thereafter to commence the phase 2 study work, which has been ongoing during the year. The site became available and travel became possible to get there during October. We had a very limited availability to actually carry out the trial. Originally we planned for 2 weeks, and in fact I think we broke a new record in terms of getting everything set up, the trial completed, and everything packed away again within 3 days, which is a very short period of time to get done what we had to do. But the outcome was positive. Extremely positive with respect to a joint decision was made to actually bring forward a trial which is a larger scale than actually was planned in phase 2, 60-ton commercial scale trial at a facility that was actually part of the phase 3 work, but was available and basically could be fast tracked into the program under the current agreement. So we the objective of this new trial is really to de-risk any of the work that needs to be done during phase 2, but actually get a larger scale demonstration done within Morocco as well. So moving forward to the next steps, which we plan to carry out, and is basically ongoing at the moment. We are finalising the amendments to the existing agreement, which is virtually complete. Our preparations are underway for the site equipment and the modifications that are needed to carry out the trial in the kiln at this new facility. We're preparing for the fuel manufacture and the logistics to get the material on site early in Q1 21. And then the plan is for 21 in Q1 to complete the trials and get the phase 2 studies completed and signed off to get payment. To then during Q2 carry out the phase 2 trials, which, like I say, because we're carrying out this industrial trial, some of the work that we're preparing for that new trial, including the MSOR equipment, is applicable for the phase 2 work. And then during the second half of the year, to finalise the MSOR fuel supply agreement and start supplying the client with MSOR fuel. Additionally, we've initiated discussion with regards to the testing of our new green MSOR product, and that's something that we'll look forward to updating you on during the year. Moving on to Utah, most of you know already the application here is quite unique. It's obviously an inland application, a very heavy asphalt deposit located in Uinta Basin in Utah. The nature of that deposit is it's 0.5% basically very heavy asphalt, by 0.5% sulfur, I meant to add. We signed an MOU beginning of 2020 with Valcor, and then subsequently an agreement was struck with a joint venture with a UK company, Tomco, in August of this year with respect to carrying out a trial, which was originally planned for the end of this year. But unfortunately, there's been a slight delay into the startup of the Petrotech facility, where Greenfield are the operators. So that's due to commence, we believe, next week, according to their latest information shared with shareholders and ourselves. And commissioning of that particular facility will take 2 weeks. In terms of next steps, the trial equipment that's ready to carry out the 600-barrel trial is ready to go. We're waiting for Greenfield's instructions to ship that to site, but that should be imminent. And then the confirmatory testing at QRF still needs to be done. We're awaiting still reliable samples of asphalt from the Petrotech facility. We had samples from a neighbouring site which were unfortunately heavily contaminated, so we were unable to test them. So we're expecting those samples to be available during this coming month in December, such that we can carry out the trials as soon as they arrive. And it typically takes 2 to 3 weeks to get those samples tested and a report written. So Q1 will be very, very busy completing that testing and the reporting, as well as shipping the material out, our equipment out. We fully expect the commercial MSAR demonstration to be carried out during Q1, which is obviously consistent with the announcements made by Petrotech and Tomco. And then during Q2, that will enable then the license agreement to be negotiated and finalised with Greenfield Energy. We've already signed a multi-site license agreement with Petrotech, as I'm sure some of you have read. And then we'll be looking to supply then obviously the equipment and the facilities under the license agreement in due course. Within Ecuador, we had a very good start to the year. We had very positive meetings with the national oil company there and the utilities, with meetings held both at the headquarters of the oil company as well as of the refinery. Subsequent visits to the refinery. We prepared a proposal which looked very attractive for the national oil company, and a proposal for basically initial testing leading to a commercial supply of our facility. Presentations were also made to the upstream client, some upstream clients by way of the SPE, Society of Petroleum Engineers in Ecuador during Q3 by one of our colleagues, Matthew Bridgman. And then an agency agreement as well was subsequently signed with Pacific Green Technologies, with a view to supplying flue gas scrubbers to reduce the emissions of fuel oil firing within Ecuador. That we thought was a part and parcel of a very compelling offer for the client. Unfortunately, the project is currently on hold. There's been a couple of matters that are really outside of QUADRISE's control with respect to a tender that has been issued by the government for operation of the refinery. There's been various reorganisations planned of the energy sector, merging the national oil company with another national entity in the upstream space. And there's been several movements of key management clients, which staff, which were our original counterparts. So we're working together with 3 Point Commodities and several other entities who are involved in this. So some of the new ventures that are planned. We believe MSAR's got a good place there, but with the uncertainty, all we can do is brief the Energy Secretary that of MSAR's compelling advantage over some of the alternatives, even as an interim step compared to various upgrading techniques, and that's where we stand at the moment. In terms of other activities in the Americas, we're soon to be launching a white paper and website some website updates in terms of bilingual offering there next week. With our partner Redliner, we're still awaiting to commence the multi-site refinery study, but we're dealing with some other potential stakeholders in that region as well to get things moving with the national oil company. And elsewhere in the Americas, we signed an agency agreement with ENPC that covers really Central and South America and the Caribbean, and we're working with those guys to get various projects underway, specifically with regards to land-based power generation. Within Saudi Arabia, we are still working with the Al Khafra group. The plan and the intent is still a boiler trial, and we've been talking with the national utility there very positively, or very open to carrying out the original test, as all of the work has originally been done. We have prepared, obviously, the bilingual white paper and updated our website into Arabic as well, and initiated various sort of digital media campaign as well in the region. We've also carried out in the last month briefings to cement companies as well as some financial stakeholders in the region, and briefings have also been very recently made to the National Oil Company with regards to our plans for the kingdom and green MSAR specifically as a new alternative to obviously gas-fired generation. Within the marine space, as some of you shareholders already know, we have been working with two main owners and operators under potential draft joint development agreements. One of them is in a very large entity in the container sector, and the other in the bulker sector. There's been very detailed exchanges of technical information with regards to obviously our fuel systems and experience, as well as sharing on their side in terms of potential vessels for trials. And obviously recently we've had introductory talks with regards to the Green MSAR initiative as well that we're working on. In terms of next steps, the plan is still this year to sign off a JDA with at least one of the owners, which will allow then during the first quarter to do all the preparatory work, to prepare for a MAN ME Lono and potentially also a Wärtsilä Lono as well. We require to obviously procure equipment for fuel production and for the vessel fuel booster systems as well, which would then allow in second quarter preparation of the vessels and our fuel supply systems, and then the second half to then carry out the Lono trial on the selected vessel. And within that plan, we've talked with both of the owners with regards to potential commercial testing of the Green MSAR product as well. And there's interest there as they are both looking at biofuels quite seriously at the moment. So this slide just gives you a summary on a dashboard in terms of where we are. Obviously, we're fairly well progressed within Morocco and Utah. Marine fuel, we expect to hopefully get some news out before the end of the year in terms of where we are with at least one of the owners there. And obviously then the National Oil Company in Ecuador, in Mexico, as well as Saudi Arabia. We not where we'd like to be for reasons previously explained, but we are still progressing in using every aspect we can to try and get those projects moving as well. To conclude my section before handing back to Mike, some of you have heard already about the Green MSAR initiative. The importance of this we cannot stress. Obviously, there is lots of discussions internally and externally with regards to greenhouse gas strategies. All of our clients are looking at decarbonisation, reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. The IMO are now taking this seriously and putting together their greenhouse gas strategy to reduce shipping emissions compared to a baseline of 2008. So there's various percentages proposed by the IMO. Our objective for Green MSAR is to produce a product that essentially enables a competitor to LNG, albeit without any methane slip and at a much lower cost to conventional LNG conversion. So that's our target. There's also some benefits in terms of sulfur dioxide emissions as well, and emissions of NOx and PM are still lower than fuel oil as well. So during this process, there's been work obviously ongoing in QRF, but we've also reached out to some biofuel stakeholders as well in terms of potential collaboration. And quite frankly, this is a game changer for future applications. All of the applications that we are considering for conventional MSAR business can in the future potentially incorporate the green MSAR initiative as well in terms of blending in the green product. So in terms of where we are with that particular scheme, obviously this is fairly new. This is a concept that's really we've been working on during the year. In terms of the testing, we've already seen that we can achieve a product with about 20 to 30% CO2 reduction capability. We prepared a joint patent that's soon to be submitted in early December. The patent's nearly there. In terms of our formal product launch, that's also planned for the coming month. And then there are some collaboration agreements under discussion with various different stakeholders, as well as diesel engine testing, both at relatively small scale, but at larger scale as well, with some of the stakeholders that we talked about that we've had experience with in the past. So they're scheduled for potentially as early as December, leading into Q1 as well of next year. And then we mentioned before some of the commercial testing that we'll bring into some of our existing projects as well, to obviously gain the experience that we need to fully commercialize the product.
Well, thank you very much, Jason. I just thought it was worth making, just before we conclude, just a couple of comments that we think are really important in the context of where we are at the moment. I think, first of all, I think it's important to re-emphasize that we did extend the cash runway from an original December 2020 through to mid-Q2 2021. And that's through a number of things. It's reducing our financial commitments, and our London office lease, which I've noticed on, is one of those. We've obviously been able to significantly reduce our travel and associated expenses, but we've also reduced our staff costs and commitments. We've been using, where appropriate, the government furlough scheme, and we've also reduced the headcount. We've 2 non-executives left the board this year, and also 2 staff. And I think I'd really like to emphasize that we do keep a very close hand on all company expenses and costs, and our cash costs are consistently below budget throughout 2020. Our fixed operating costs are around £250,000 a month, excluding any project costs. And to reiterate, we're fully funded through to mid-Q2 2021. Now, we'll come on to in questions one of the areas that is a cost for us, isn't a significant one in terms of these other areas that we've covered, but we will come on to that in the Q&A session as well. But I really wanted to emphasize there, we are acutely aware of the importance of ensuring that shareholders' funds is spent in a very wise way, and we go out of our way to make sure we do that. Just in terms of where we are as a wrap up, we're solving this global problem now by producing these stable all-in water emulsions. We've got our proven technology, and we've got industry-leading IP and global partners. We're also enabling a cleaner energy transition through the use of our existing MSAR technology, which we believe will be further added to with green MSAR, making material reduction in the CO2 emissions if you fueled with green MSAR versus heavy fuel oil, or even against LNG. And we've got a pipeline of opportunities. We've given you an update on those, and yes, some of those have not progressed as we hoped they would have done. Others are on track, despite the fact that we've been living through some unprecedented times that have actually made it pretty challenging for us as a business, together with lots of other businesses out there. But we think we've got a very exciting bunch of opportunities that we're in a very good position to actually progress as we go through the early part of 2021. And I think with that, we can actually come to an end of the presentation. As I said, now we're going to go to the sort of Q&A session. But what we'll do first of all, rather than looking at the questions that are coming in today, there are a number that came in prior to the meeting being sort of closed off to questions that we'll look at first of all.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jason. Just to say, ladies and gentlemen, do please continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review those investor questions submitted already, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard on the Investor Meet Company platform. And lastly, before I hand back to Mike, Jason, and the board, I'd like to remind you your feedback is important to the company, so do please take a few minutes at the end of this webinar to present your feedback where prompted to do so. Mike, Jason, and the rest of the board, before we perhaps look at the submitted questions, as you said, Mike, we did have a number of pre-submitted questions. Perhaps I could hand over to you to start with those, and then we can move forward to the live Q&A.
Yeah, and again, just to emphasize to everyone, if you're new to this platform, the questions, if we don't get a chance to answer any questions during the meeting itself, we do go on afterwards and make sure that those are answered and then uploaded onto the Investor Meet Company platform, where we answer a question that has been submitted verbally. You actually get taken to the particular part of the presentation that answers that question. Where we answer it in written form afterwards, you'll see a written form answer there. In terms of the ones that we've submitted previously, what we've done is try to group them together into a number of sort of consistent areas. And there are a number that actually sort of are essentially variations on a theme. So you may not find that your particular question has been answered, but we think we've certainly answered what we believe to be the essence of all the questions. But before we go on to the more general questions relating to the projects, I'd perhaps like first of all to talk to a couple of ones which talk about some areas to do with particularly executive compensation. But before I do that, I think it's probably helpful for Phil Snaith, who's the chairman of our compensation committee, to provide a bit of context there. And then I'll come in and provide some specific comments regarding my view on that as well.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I'm on the phone, so I do apologise to everybody. There's a slight technical hitch with the volume, but with the sound. But I'm glad you can hear me. I'm sorry that we're not all together in person, but I do welcome this opportunity to discuss the work of the Compensation Committee with you all, and I can assure you that we take our role and responsibilities very seriously indeed. And we also spend a considerable amount of time on the very subjects you raise. We are acutely aware of the reliance on shareholders' cash whilst we remain pre-sustainable revenue. So that's always at the back of our minds. Therefore, our objective has been and remains to strike a sensible and practical balance between the need to retain, motivate and incentivize our executive team and to conserve our scarce cash. So let me say a few words on exactly what we've been doing. Firstly, base salaries have remained unchanged, contrary to popular opinion. For Jason, for example, since 2014, and for Mike since 2016. We did implement a 3% inflation increase only from the 1st of January 2020. So if you look at total executive director base salary and bonus together, they are 19% lower than they were in 2015. We've increased the percentage of compensation at risk too, by linking directly both bonuses and share option awards to specific and measurable annual business targets. And also the total available bonus pot has been restricted considerably in line with our cash realities. It's important to highlight to you all that no bonuses were paid for 2017 or 2018, and that a partial bonuses for 2019 resulted from the clear delivery of specific targets relating to our successful fundraise. We consider the award of performance-based share options is an important part of the compensation mix. Why? Well, because it allows us to provide essential executive delivery incentives that align closely with your best interests as shareholders whilst conserving our scarce cash. It's important that our senior executives have meaningful skin in the game. I'm sure you would agree with that. And all our recent options have been awarded at a considerable premium to the prevailing share price, which I'm sure you've noted. In the case of Mark, he's only recently joined the board and received no related increase in base salary despite his increased responsibilities, and likewise for Jason in his new role as CEO. I should also add that where available and when available, we use appropriate AIM salary surveys to help us and to inform us of compensation trends, to allow us to benchmark, for example, against comparable companies with similar pre-revenue market capitalization, to ensure that we've got competitive remuneration packages. And let me just say finally that all our executives have the skills, experience and opportunities to take up employment elsewhere. I don't think we would be thanked for losing our critical staff and with them the means of delivering the commercial contracts our company desperately needs. So I think that's all I'll say for the moment, Mike. I'll hand back to you.
Right, thank you very much. There were a number of questions asked surrounding this, but I think hopefully Phil has clarified something, which is there were not significant base salary increases there for either myself or Jason. Actually, quite the contrary, those base salaries have actually reduced in real terms over that period, but we did get a small inflationary increase in January. There were some partial bonuses awarded to myself and Jason in regard to performance during 2019, particularly being able to deliver the work that enabled us to get the successful fundraising completed in the autumn of that year. But perhaps if I can I'm going to close off this session just by giving you some thoughts from my perspective. Well, first of all, just to make it clear, although it's not evident from the disclosures in the annual report, because obviously those fall over a financial year, not calendar years, from February of this year, my salary was reduced by 50%, supposedly in line with my time commitment to the business, but that hasn't really worked out in that way from my perspective. So there has been a significant reduction from my perspective. I think I'm going to talk about the whole team here, and that isn't just Mark and it isn't just Jason, because whilst we're a small team, everyone is playing a very important role in this. And my view would be to you as shareholders, because some have said, what about salary deferrals and things like that? One is, in the total scheme of things, we've done this in the past and we thought it was the right thing to do. It isn't necessarily the sort of thing that all of our team members are in a position to put forward. And my view absolutely would be, I want all the team members focused on delivering for this business, not thinking about, are they better off looking for a job somewhere else if we're going to say you should be deferring a significant part of your salary without any sort of benefit to that. And I think just to reinforce the other thing that Phil said there, a couple of comments have come through about share option awards, and completely contrary to what most other companies would do. If you look at the share option awards that have been provided to the executive directors recently, and sometimes there are close period issues here, but at the time that decision was taken, or at the time of grant, those option awards were at prices between 3 and 5 times the prevailing share price, not at the market price. So we've got to really deliver on behalf of shareholders to see any value there. And we're absolutely committed to doing that. And we have got, I think, a good value board and executive team and overall team here who are really committed to delivering on your behalf. So with that, I'm going to close down on that issue, because that's absolutely our position on that. There are then a number regarding sort of PR/IR, and that's an area that I take responsibility for. So, I also take it on the chin. If it is your view that we're not doing as good a job as we can there, we are continually looking to increase and improve what we do in terms of our PR and IR. We're obviously reliant on having that news flow coming through on that. Where we have had that news flow, we get information out there to the market promptly. But I do want to come back on a couple of specific points that a number of people made that intimate that they believe they're getting news from some of our partners, and clearly it doesn't take a great deal of thinking that they're talking there about Petrotech and Tomco. I will reiterate what I said earlier this year. Our shareholders are not getting any relevant information for what is being put out by Petrotech and Tomco about what we are doing. They are telling you about what they're doing in their project. We will tell you what we're doing to support that project. And some of that information that has been put out, I would remind people that actually Petrotech don't even have any involvement in the management of that facility. That's being done by Greenfield Energy. So I think you maybe draw your own conclusions as to what the rationale is for Petrotech's pushing out of information there. But we get to you, our shareholders, all the relevant information on what we're doing in Utah. I think there is this a sort of a comment about, do we have a professional PR advisors? Yes, absolutely we do. We think we're doing together with FTI, and not just the normal team that we've been using, but some specialist social media teams. We've been using this to really good effect on the back of the work we've been doing in the Middle East on the Saudi Arabia white paper. We'll be doing very similar things with the white paper and what we're looking at doing in South America. So again, we are looking to improve things. I accept we don't always get things right, but we are always seeking to actually make sure that you get up-to-date information that is as clear and as precise as it can be and completely fulfills our disclosure obligations. I think the other thing I want to say in that regard is that I've had a couple of questions which have been pretty pointed saying, given that you've failed to deliver on things, are these meetings through Investor Meet Company of any further use? And I'd say to the person that's sort of asked that question, when we took a poll after the last Investor Meet Company presentation, the overwhelming majority, and I'm not talking I'm talking 99% of people thought they were very helpful and wanted them to continue. If you don't find them helpful, you don't need to log in and look at them, but the vast majority of shareholders we think do. And I think with that, it's probably then helpful, Jason, if we pick up on some of the comments regarding sales and market.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to try and maybe work through some of the projects in terms of some of the questions that were raised in advance as well. So one of the questions was with respect to where the fuel for the January Morocco trial is coming from and how much are we getting paid for the trial in question. So to deliver the trial in Q1, there are a number of supply options that we've already identified. In terms of the nature of people that can supply the quantity that we need, which is 60 tons approximately, those tend to be terminals that are already involved in the bitumen business. So we're involved with a number of bitumen operators who already produce asphalt emulsions, and we can then work together with them with our particular formulations to then provide obviously the chemicals and the formulations in advance, and our people to carry out the manufacture of the fuel. So we're working with a number of different potential manufacturers, not just for this particular trial, but obviously going forward as well. We can't disclose who they are, but that's the plan, and they're ready to. This is outside of the bitumen season as well, so it's a good time to get things done with those sorts of companies. But obviously, we need to do testing of the bitumen material first before we make the MSAR fuel, because it's very important that that's fit for purpose. And under the next phase of the current agreement that we have with the particular client in question, we were going to get paid around £100,000 for the next phase of work, and that's still the intention. Maybe a little bit more in terms of now bringing in the industrial trial, but that's the intent is that we carry out. We get paid for the trials that we're doing. So that was a question on Morocco, which I think some of the questions have come in.
Yeah,
I'm seeing coming online. It's covered some of those at least. There was another question with regards to obviously can we have confirmation that the pre-work has been done in terms of the hardware and sourcing of the fuel feedstock, which I've just answered. And yeah, will it be carried out in Q1 2021? And that's something that the team are very busy with now, in making sure that all of the preparations are done, not only in the UK, where we're assembling all the fuel handling systems, but also at the site to make sure we can very quickly plumb those in and carry out the trial successfully, and then get to obviously the phase 2 work. So that was one of the questions with regards to Morocco. And one other one was with regards to the, in terms of Morocco again, was in terms of the industrial trial. Can you clarify if industrial scale trial can lead to direct commercial contracts with Morocco, or does the original phase 2 work need to be completed prior to the commercial contracts? So yes, the industrial trial work will not lead initially to commercial contracts. We will need to carry out the phase 2 work. The industrial site that we're doing the trials at is a large consumer of fuel oil within the group's portfolio. So that's one of the possibilities there. But ideally, what the client would require is also the other site to be converted as well. So that's intended under the phase 2 work. The beauty is that the work that we're doing for the industrial trial and the systems that we're supplying as QUADRISE for the particular industrial trial will be suitable for phase 2 as well. So that should hopefully both de-risk and fast track the phase 2 trials to enable them to get done in Q2 of next year.
Jason, perhaps while you look through and just clarify exactly where we are, there are a couple of others that I thought were maybe helpful. There are a couple of questions that actually said, what's our strategy for improving the share price or increasing the share price? And another about, we seem reluctant to talk up the share price. I want to be really clear about this. It's not our job to talk up the share price or to have a strategy for improving the share price. And I'd probably say to any shareholder, if you shareholding in a business where the directors think they can control the share price, you maybe should think about that, because we don't, and no director controls the share price. What we need to do is deliver on the projects and get that news out into the market, and then that provides the market with the information it needs to appropriately price the shares. Have we done as good a job as we can historically on that? No, we haven't, and we are constantly looking at how we can improve that. But the other area I'd like to reconfirm to people, there seems to be a feeling that we like to hide behind NDAs. And NDAs are a really important means of ensuring that commercial businesses can protect their legitimate commercial interests. What we never do is actually impose these on a customer that doesn't want to do it. And frankly, there are now customers that don't want to do business with us without entering into an NDA. But we specifically would always prefer to be able to disclose information. And that's how we have those negotiations and discussions with those clients and potential clients. We want to put information out there, not withhold it from you, because we think getting that information out there is helpful for us and it's helpful for you as shareholders. So I just really wanted to clarify that's sort of one area there, that we are seeking to make sure that we get that information out there. And that's our strategy. It's not a strategy about improving the share price. It's a strategy about ensuring that the work we're doing gets accurately put into the market, and then the market can reflect on that in terms of how it prices our shares.
Thank you, Mike. I was going to come back to Utah next, in terms of some of the questions that have come in with respect to Utah. Some of which have really been around, I guess, puzzlement with regards to our apparent lack of engagement with the client, which has obviously not been the case. But with respect to, I guess, some of the activities, and some people are asking for some clarity in terms of, is there a reason why bitumen samples from the Utah winter basins haven't been tested? The second, why are we waiting? Surely the properties of the bitumen oil should be sufficient for us to know that we can emulsify it. And then, is there a firm timetable for receiving and testing the samples, and then our plant to be shipped, installed and commissioned on site? Hopefully my presentation has helped in terms of where we are with that. As I think we mentioned during the presentation, and I'll mention again because I think there were some questions about the samples as well. We did receive samples that we couldn't get any samples from the Petrotech site. Unfortunately, the material in those tanks originally were not suitable for testing because there had been some contamination with that. There were then some samples procured from a neighbouring site with a different technology. Unfortunately, they had not been assayed before they were sent to us, and they were contaminated with some material that included large quantities of sand and some chemicals, which obviously the other neighbouring site had been adding. So obviously there are different ways of actually extracting the material in Uinta Basin. You know, all of the different developers have got different technologies. What we'd like to say is that the technology that the Petrotech obviously promoting is very suitable for the MSAR system. It's very efficiently extracts the oil from the sand and results in very low levels of water and sand in the products, and that's ideally the material that you need as a fuel. Can we look at just simply looking at assay material? Can we provide a direct go or no go for the material? Yes, but to a point. We always need to have physical samples to actually provide a commercial guarantee, and we are extremely careful in making sure that material that is done. There's no specific analysis that can be done because it's a very complex reaction and process that happens actually at the surface of the molecule, of the hydrocarbon molecule. There's no assay work that can be done in advance. Physical testing does need to be done at QRF to provide the guarantees that we require as a company. So I think that explains one of the questions that's been provided. And the other aspect is then, in terms of the samples, you know, we'll be turning these around very, very quickly once they've been supplied. Obviously, the Petrotech facility needs to get up and running, which would hopefully happen next week, touch wood. They then plan to commission for a couple of weeks. There's obviously no certainty as to how that will go, but the team in place are very professional, so we expect that will be up and running. And then we'll get the correct samples that we'll then be able to receive at QRF and then turn around as quickly as possible. And obviously, you know, that's our top priority at QRF, and as soon as they arrive, we'll focus on those. In the meantime, all of our equipment has been prepared. It's ready to be shipped. We're just waiting Greenfield to give us the go-ahead. Obviously, they don't want our equipment arriving at the same time as they're starting commissioning of their plant, and that's reasonable as well. So as soon as commissioning is underway, we expect to be given the green light to enable the shipment, and our shippers are ready to pick up the containers concerned and ship them across to Utah. So hopefully that's answered some of those questions.
I think then the one that I apologise that I missed off, there were a couple of questions relating to the disapplication authorities that we sought at the AGM. I think just to clarify on that, you know, we thought the board itself thought that was absolutely the right thing for us to do, to provide the company with the maximum flexibility as we go to 2021 to respond to opportunities. You'll have seen from the RNS that went out following the conclusion of our AGM today, that didn't get passed. I'd just like to reiterate that, you know, clearly we've listened to shareholders in terms of their disquiet about the scale of those disapplication. I'd have to say it's not completely out with what would be usual for many AIM companies, but we've absolutely heard what shareholders have had to say about that. And, you know, should we have a need to, we can come back to shareholders to put particular opportunities in front of them for those disapplication authorities through a general meeting. That will require some additional time and some additional cost, and it could have some implications in particular circumstances for the opportunities that we could look at. But overall, it still gives us what we need to continue to develop the business and actually take it from where we are now to a successful, sustainable business that's delivering for you, our shareholders, shareholder value. Thank
you, Mike. There was a question with regards to came in with regards to marine fuels. please outline the strategy for the new marine loanos and what measures you are using to ensure this is no repeat of the Maersk saga. So in terms of the new marine loanos, our plan is to take more of a technical lead. For the previous loanos, obviously that activity was carried out by Maersk. But if we take more of a technical lead and more responsibility, we expect that we'll get the necessary outcome that we require, which is obviously the full loanos for the MAN ME engines, and ideally the flex engines from Wärtsilä and WinGD. But also we'll have the engine data as well, the full engine data and all the information that we need to then fully market the material to other owners as well. But whilst we regret the final outcome with Maersk, we don't regret the experience that we gained as part of that process that resulted in obviously the marine MSAR product, which we wouldn't have had if we hadn't have gone through that, and also the valuable experience that we've had to date, which has really given the confidence that we need to carry out the loano activities that we plan for next year. There was another question, I guess, with regards to Maersk again, which was basically, given the significant exhaust gas cleaning system capacity now installed within the Maersk fleet, do you have any answer as to why they are not developing MSAR as a preferred fuel source? The reason, I guess, that Maersk are not is that we're not actively promoting at the moment MSAR to Maersk. We are actually focusing on the other owners concerned. They have a larger installed base of scrubbers, a much larger potential demand for higher sulfur MSAR fuel. So at the moment, we are not, Maersk is not top of our list. Having said that, they've now got nearly 100 scrubbers on their ships, so that could be something that we focus on again. But at the moment, we are respecting the owners that we are working with currently, who have been very, very proactive, I have to say.
Sure. I don't know whether if you want me to just pick up a few of the questions that have come in while you look through those.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think one just from Vic. Hi, Vic. I hope you're well. And the question was, what was the purpose of this morning's RNS, which informed shareholders nothing materially new, but has resulted in a drop in the share price? Vic, that is just a very standard update RNS that we would put out ahead of any presentation like this, just to ensure that there isn't anything that could be construed as selected disclosure, because it contains everything which we've provided in terms of the presentation here today. How the market responds to a particular RNS, I'm afraid, is sometimes a bit of a mystery, but we don't have any doubt that that was absolutely the right thing for us to do, to ensure that those that aren't able to join this presentation now were provided the information at the same time as every other shareholder.
Thanks, Mike. Questions next about Ecuador, if I may. There was a question with regards to, the first question was, Ecuador was given as an example of a project that could go from zero to execution in a very short period of time. Considerable effort and resource was given to Ecuador by the QFI team. However, it appears to have died away as a prospect. What are the issues, and do you expect to meaningfully progress this in the near term? Again, I think I did answer this in the presentation, but what we said at the time was correct. We had a very, very we still have a very strong opportunity within that particular refinery and in that country to deliver MSAR technology. We had very good relations through our partners Freepoint, with senior management within the national oil company as well, and support at all levels, all the way down to the refinery to implement the technology. In terms of the speed, the technology could go in very, very quickly to answer a requirement within the refinery to switch to a lower cost fuel, and immediately save on imported cutter stock within Ecuador. So, we had then also a plan to reduce emissions in the refinery as well, which is an issue for the local population, together with Pacific Green Technology. So, we have a very compelling solution for that particular refinery. It's just complicated at the moment within Ecuador. A lot of the senior management within the national oil company have actually resigned. and even some of the replacements have resigned as well. So it's a complicated battle between the National Oil Company and the government at the moment, which makes obviously delivery of that project problematic. But we are in touch with stakeholders who are involved in the new tender process as well. There was a question, Mark, with regards to I think a recent announcement that refers to if the Esmeraldas refinery operation is handed over to a consortium that involves Aramco, do you foresee this as beneficial for MSAR integration or a barrier, given our 10 years in KSA without MSAR take-up? A valid criticism. Obviously, we've been working in Saudi for some time, and it's too early really to say whether any of the offers for the Esmeraldas refinery for the particular government tender are serious or not. Until that really settles, it's very hard to say. We would hope that obviously Aramco's involvement would help any initiatives we have in the kingdom, but again, it's very difficult to see where this will end up in terms of that particular soap opera within Ecuador at the moment.
If I pick up a question that actually comes on from one that Phil spoke to earlier, and this is from Mark S. Hi, Mark. And I'm going to paraphrase it because it's quite a long question, but it's basically, how do you expect, Mike, people to have any faith in what you say because you don't have any real investment in this business? And is that acceptable? And Mark, I'll come back to you very directly. I view my stake in the business as meaningful, and like you, most of those shares were bought at a significant premium to the current share price. So when people talk about the impact on investors, they seem to forget sometimes that we are investors as well, and we've put our money in, and all those shares that I've bought in the business have been bought through fundraisings at exactly the same price as every other shareholder could do, or have been bought in the market as a result of topping up through better and ISAs. So I don't have any issue whatsoever that I am significantly invested in this business. Whether that's at a level that you would regard as significant or not, I don't know, Mark. But I think my level of investment tallies very well with what you'd see in many companies that are listed. And I've put a significant amount of money in. I continue to put a significant amount of time and effort into this, and I am really incentivized to deliver against that. And it's that incentivization that aligns us very closely with you, our shareholders.
Thanks, Mike, and I share that sentiment as well. In terms of a question in the Middle East, which came in advance, have the recent policy changes by the Ministry of Energy in KSA affected plans in any way, especially the point relating to reducing liquid fuel consumption for power generation and focusing on natural gas and renewables? What we would say is that, as usual, in terms of what's stated in terms of policy and what's actually happening are very different. So if you look at the monthly stats of liquid fuel consumption within the kingdom, they've never been higher. There's been a very high level of fuel oil consumption, and based on the information that we have on the ground, the intention is that will be maintained for the next, at least the next 5 to 10 years. So we still see that's a very strong opportunity. Obviously, that requires the National Oil Company also to fully engage and get back to preparing for the trial. Without the National Oil Company on board, they basically have the monopoly supply of fuel into the kingdom and within the kingdom, and that's really our main focus at the moment, is the National Oil Company and the Ministry of Energy. There was a question, Mark, with regards to green MSAR in advance again. Do we now have any patents for green MSAR, and can you give us any information with regards to the strategy for development and rollout? Again, I think we covered that in the slides, but the patent will be lodged certainly before the end of the year. Intent is very early in December. That'll be a joint patent together with our partners, Neurion. And the plan is, again, in early December to have a formal launch of the green MSAR product that will provide more details. We've already provided some information in the investment pack already, or sorry, the AGM pack of today, in terms of what we plan to do with regards to testing of the fuel, basically on within diesel engines, both at a relatively small scale, but then also at a larger scale with some of the major OEMs as well in Q1 of next year. So that's all part of the plan and all within the existing budget that obviously takes us through to Q2 of 2021.
I'll pick up a couple that are coming from Mark N. In fact, there are sort of several. I think some we've addressed, but actually, Mark, you've made a comment regarding Edison, and do we think it's appropriate to be spending money on Edison when it doesn't benefit shareholders in any way? I think, Mark, the figure that you quoted isn't correct, actually, by quite a long way. And actually, interestingly, one of the questions that has come in from another shareholder today results in them having read an Edison report. So I think the view that there are no benefit to shareholders maybe is yours. I'm not sure that's shared by everyone else, and it's certainly not shared by us. Again, I think very directly, Mark, back to you, you've made a question as to whether I have deliberately been misleading shareholders by some of the things I've said historically. Absolutely not. Have we always been able to deliver what we expected to deliver? No, those are two entirely different things.
Okey-dokey. I can't find the question I was about to ask. There was a question from Michael C. That's come online in terms of reference marine. Does a decision of both the potential marine clients hinge on the samples from Utah? And the answer is no. Both the clients in question have very large quantities of exhaust gas cleaning system scrubbers on their ships, so they can handle high sulfur material as well. So there's no direct link between Utah and the marine clients in question. But obviously, those marine clients also do have vessels that consume low sulfur fuel as well. So that could be one possibility in the future. There's some follow-up questions that I'll treat as well in terms of the cost of transporting the material from the Utah facility. That's obviously something that we're working with Greenfield directly, who have responsibility obviously for the oil. We're just simply the licensor. So that's something that we're helping and assisting them with in terms of potential clients for the fuel. And there was also a question about whether CEPSA will be brought back into the equation in terms of producing MSAR. And obviously with both marine clients and Morocco in scope, that's obviously one of the supply options that we are talking to.
If I just pick a couple that are coming from Mark S. I think actually you said the Caribbean was mentioned in the presentation. No comment was made of Freepoint. Actually, I think Jason did cover that in terms of what we're doing with them in Ecuador. So I think that's covered off, Mark. I'm not going to respond to your thoughts that my holdings are piffling amount. I don't agree with you, Mark, and I think we'll just have to agree to disagree. I think the other area is just the comment that was made regarding Maersk and whether that is now dead in the water. And I think our view has been that where we've got significant sort of resource issues in the business, we're a small team, we want our resource to be focused on those parties that are engaging with us willingly and actually talking to us. And frankly, that hasn't been the case with Maersk. So, Mark and Jason have been focused on those other operators that are willing to engage with us significantly and meaningfully. And, that is starting to bear fruits.
There was a clarification point from Steve Y asking, in terms of Morocco, please, can you please clarify today's RNS? It shows phase 2 in Q2 2021, but the presentation says Q1 2021. To clarify where we are, the phase 2 work referred to in the presentation is within the agreement. So that's a study work. So that will be completed during Q1 2021 alongside the industrial trial. as stated in the presentation. With respect to the phase two commercial trials, which will be subject to new agreements, they will be carried out during Q2 2021. There's another question from Steve Y, actually, in terms of are the startup costs similar for green MSAR as per conventional MSAR? I would say not. The costs that the current costs that we've incurred for the green MSAR test work have been pretty much purely internal. So a lot of the work and the testing systems and the regimes that we and the procedures that we've followed are all applicable for green MSAR. And the expectations are, and that's subject to the trials that we plan to do, but the expectations are that that the green MSAR, or the work that we've already done on MSAR in terms of the application testing, both in boilers, in industrial facilities and in diesel, are applicable also. And we can get very quick read across in terms of the work we've already done on MSAR. So they're substantially less than the conventional MSAR.
An interesting question from Michael C, just about does the impact of some of the emerging groups of sort of more activist investors pushing for corporate action have any impact for us in terms of Saudi, our business in Saudi? Well, all I would say on that is the national oil company in Saudi Arabia, whilst quoted, is in a unusual position that it has a very small public free float, and therefore my view would be they would be very difficult to persuade via engagement with investors, because their majority and by far largest investor is the Saudi government itself. So I don't think that of itself will help us, but I think what it does do is really ensure that all of these national oil companies see that there is a real benefit to them in actually engaging, and particularly on things, whether that's MSAR or whether that's green MSAR. So I'd say overall it provides us with a nice a background against which we can pursue our business development and other opportunities, but it's probably not going to see action from that particular party driving things, but it may create a more conducive atmosphere for our discussions with them.
Sorry, Mike, go on.
I was just going to say that the question that came in from Chris A, Jason, which is about the September business update. We said that we'd get one of the low-no trials would start later this year or early in Q1 2021, and suggesting that what we said today shows that there's been a material change. I think it's probably to do with terminology on this, but if I give you my response sort of first, Chris, and then Jason can come in. I think, we would regard a trial as starting when we enter into an agreement with a party to do that. There's quite a bit of work requires to be done before that to ensure we've got a place to produce the fuel ready and up and running, and the work required actually on the vessel. But that trial would commence effectively when we entered into that agreement, in the same way it did when we entered into the agreement with Cepsa and Maersk back in 2015. So we still think we are on track. I think Jason has re-emphasised that we're working to get one of those JDAs signed with one of those operators during the course of this year. But we're looking for that work to substantively start in Q1 and then go into Q2, and following that with the low-nos actually commencing in terms of fuel being burnt on the vessels in the second half of 2021.
Yeah, there's a good question in from James G. Do you envisage that marine owners will simply just wait for green MSAR, which could take a while to trial and test, and thus delay the opportunity of much needed revenues of rolling out MSAR in its form? The answer is no, James. Based on the discussions we've had with both the owners, the key benefit of MSAR is cost saving and emissions reduction, basically as is, and that's a compelling reason to switch to MSAR and obviously get the test done and gain the experience that they would need. All of the investment that they would then be making, and we would be making to actually produce conventional MSAR is applicable anyway for green MSAR, and that can be phased into the system as results are available. But neither owner that we've spoken to is delaying their go ahead on the basis that the green MSAR product has reached the testing phase.
And if I can maybe pick up a few that have been asked about a sort of future funding, and I think it's really important that I clarify what we've made clear is we've got funds in place to get us through to mid Q2 2021. What is important for us is actually not to sort of flag anything in particular in terms of scale and timing of the funding, and I'm clearly not going to do that. I'll just re-emphasize we've got funds in place through to mid Q2 2021. What we have reiterated, and I think this is an area where I think I would hope that all shareholders would agree that we've delivered against this, is we've always been clear that were we to bring funding opportunities, we think it is really important that we recognise the faith and the significant investment in both time and money that has been placed in this company by its large number of retail shareholders. And we would always want to ensure that any funding plans which we may bring forward would ensure that retail shareholders can have the opportunity to participate on exactly the same terms as anyone else. And we would never countenance anything which would change that. I'm not going to talk any further about that, but I really did want to just reiterate that. That is something that we regard as absolutely vital for us as a business. And it just reiterates, I hope, and reflects how much value we place in you, primarily our large base of retail shareholders, for the investments that you've made and the faith that you've put in us as a management team and the business itself. And perhaps just picking up one of the comments from Paul G. Yeah, we absolutely realise, Paul, that we have, you could characterise us as a bit of a jam tomorrow. And we've done a number of things where things have not worked out as we had hoped. I'd like to reiterate that when we put forward things to you, they are always based on the information that we have at the time and our honestly held beliefs at that time, based on information that we've got. If it doesn't turn out like that, it doesn't turn out like that. But we have never put anything forward to shareholders in terms of what we are doing in terms of progress that has been put there. And we don't believe it ourselves. We absolutely do, based on the information we have at the time. I think that's all I need to say. But I'll just pick up in passing a couple of questions from Chris A. On behalf of Bob S. That was just an error on that particular website where they deleted one of my directorships rather than the other one. So there's nothing to be read into the fact that my QUADRISE role isn't shown on another particular website. And I think the only other thing to pick up is perhaps this thing on which had been mentioned on a couple of questions, what are JGC actually doing? And again, I think this is one of the things where it's interesting when we were talking to people working in Saudi Arabia. One of the things that people in country really like about people who they want to do business with is that they don't just dip in and out of a market. They're actually there for the longer term. And actually that's absolutely the case in Saudi Arabia. And we know we've got to get to a position of being able to deliver on that, but it does make it a lot easier to have those discussions when they know you've been around in country for a long period of time and have got trusted in-country partners. The same thing goes with JGC. Have things developed with JGC as quickly as they hoped they would do? Frankly, not. And I think we've indicated that in the past. Do we think they're a valuable partner of ours and a conduit into things happening in the Japanese market? Absolutely. And I think Jason, we provided an update on some of the work that we're doing with them last time.
Yeah, we did. Work is ongoing with JGC, and in fact, a major engine OEM with regards to a new project potentially in Japan, which is a collaborative project between JGC and ourselves and the OEM concerned. So that work is ongoing. It has a very interesting future application, again, to reduce CO2 emissions within Japan, but that's something that we're scoping out together jointly between the three parties. So that relationship is very much active. There's a question from Mark S. In terms of the Caribbean. It says the Caribbean was mentioned in the presentation. No comment was made of Freepoint, as I recall. What is the situation with them, our relationship and project involvement? Our relationship with Freepoint, they are obviously a very large trading company, but they don't necessarily have feet on the ground in every single area. That's where we signed up with our agents, EMPC, who do have very good connections in terms of the power generators within that territory. So the role of Freepoint would be, as these projects progress in the Caribbean and in Central America with the EMPC, that we would then bring Freepoint in potentially, if they're interested, obviously, as potential suppliers of the fuel together with ourselves. So very much an active relationship with Freepoint, but in terms of people on the ground, that's where we're utilising other potential agents and consultants as well.
Jason, I don't know whether you want to pick up the third from the bottom from James G.
Scrolling down. Could you elaborate what is happening with Eco Patrol? Is it dead? Eco Patrol is a supply source for MSAR potentially. We had a very good look at one of their refineries in the past, and that refinery hasn't changed its configuration or technology. So still definitely a supply source. It's pending a user, basically a consumer in that region. But it's definitely one of the supply sources if we get one of the power plants engaged, which is the work that EMPC are doing at the moment.
And I'm just going to come back to a question from Mark N. And I'm not going to sort of pose the question in the particular person, but I'll just reiterate to Mark N that as a listed business, we've got disclosure obligations as directors in any dealings in shares. So any dealings in those shares would have been disclosed via an RNS.
Scrolling through this, see if there's stuff that we haven't answered yet. Some of the questions we've answered already.
I think maybe there's one here from Robert H. Jason, that you might be able to give a bit of background on. And Robert H. says, have Valcor made any progress in looking for customers, or is it waiting for a test to finish? Or is it waiting for the test to finish?
Oh, yeah, I mean, very good question. Obviously, to target specific customers is very, very useful to have a fuel specification. It's very hard to have a fuel specification without a decent assay from the deposit, even though it's obviously a very large deposit. Reality is that each of the fields are different. So we are waiting for a detailed assay to talk to potential clients, but some of those, they are ourselves and Greenfield are already reaching out to potential customers in the region with a view to obviously the Q1 trial, which is a fairly limited volume anyway, for 600 barrels, 100 tons.
And if I can pick up the last question from a James C. Sorry, and I don't mean this is the last question we'll answer. It's the last question shown on the screen at the minute. Why is it taking so long to get meaningful engagement with the NOC in KSA? We have talked about this over a long period of time, James. I'm sure you're aware, many national oil companies are labyrinthine in their structure. Perhaps none more so than Aramco because of its scale, and the fact that they get directives on what is going to be done in the business. And interestingly, one of the questions we were asked earlier is what implications are there for the sort of edict within KSA that they should be reducing their use of liquid fuels and starting to consume more gas and renewables. And whilst that's the edict, interestingly, their consumption of liquid fuels probably in the short to medium term has actually increased rather than decreased. So there's a lot being said in these areas about what they think should be happening that actually isn't characterised by what is practically happening on the ground. But all I can say is we are, leaving no stone unturned as to how we can get that engagement there, because we absolutely had it at one point, because we got on the brink of actually starting that trial with the National Oil Company and the energy company in Saudi Arabia. So we know we can do it. It's just a matter of redoubling our efforts to get there.
Yeah. There's a question, Mark, from Adam C. Do you have NDA signed with all current deals? The answer is yes. It's very important, obviously, the client, in order to provide the necessary information to us, both technical and commercial, they obviously need to feel that they're covered. So, and by the same token, we have a lot of knowledge and IP that we need to protect as well. So, on a mutual basis, every project that we work on requires a detailed non-disclosure agreement that we obviously then have to follow. It's very difficult to progress a project without an NDA in place.
And if I can just take up a quick sort of question from Adam C, and I'm going to characterise this because it to me is just symptomatic of what a shareholder base we have. That Adam was really kind enough when he saw the update to our website of something that he thought that we could do to improve how it would translate for people from English into modern standard Arabic. So yes, Adam, that information was sent on to our developers. We've done it in a slightly different way, but I'd just like to thank you. And we do get various offers of help and leads that are sent through to us. And I just want to say all of those we do look at. If we can't always respond to everything and tell you how things are going, but we do look at all of those. So thank you very much, because it really to us demonstrates your interest in the business.
Mm-hmm. There was a question, Mark, from Vic A about green MSAR. You're clearly excited about green MSAR, which we are, that's true. Along with sourcing bitumen, you'll also have to source biofuel. Is this likely to extend the lead times for green MSAR, for the green MSAR project getting underway? The answer is that basically we're not sourcing a biofuel, we're sourcing a biofuel derivative in our particular case. This is a derivative that's available today and is essentially a commodity. In terms of the lead time, getting the project underway, obviously we need to make sure that we've done the necessary testing, and that's to make sure that this behaves together with the standard MSAR package that we're blending it with, that it behaves as it should do and behaves competitively from a performance and emissions perspective compared to a conventional MSAR as well, and also from a cost basis. So they're the main aspects that we're focusing on initially. In terms of availability of the product, there's definitely availability, and as it's a byproduct, as I mentioned, then there's a definite environmental benefit of potentially it being blended, this particular product being blended into MSAR.
John B, you've asked the question, could you explain the key benefits of green MSAR over standard MSAR? I think, Jason, I hope put that over in his presentation earlier, but we think one of the absolute key ones is that ability to significantly reduce CO2 emissions, to actually get down to it being similar to or lower than using LNG, but without any of the disbenefits that methane slip has with LNG and the huge cost of infrastructure that's required to move from HFO to LNG, whereas this is about using existing HFO infrastructure.
Some questions from David D in terms of the Morocco trial. How can the Morocco trial be delivered on time if the location hasn't been confirmed yet, given the length of time it would take to install an MMU? We are working with potential bitumen terminals that have essentially asphalt emulsion plants in place. We will make the modifications that we need to make and supply the additives that we need to supply, so that we're using the existing infrastructure and not our own MMUs, which are targeted obviously for some of the other trials that we have in place and planned, one of which being Balcourt and Greenfield, the Greenfield POSP site.
And Jason, I don't know whether you want to take the one third from the bottom from James G. as how is a biofuel derivative more green than water? As I presume you're replacing the 29% water with the derivative.
We are, but unfortunately water doesn't have any calorific value. I wish it did. So the idea is that essentially what we're doing is we're displacing also the residue. The residue has carbon in, and that creates obviously the CO2 emissions. So it's really reducing the carbon content of the fuel that then provides the energy that you need, and essentially you get the same amount of energy but with much lower CO2 emissions, which is equivalent to burning gas.
And if I could just
go on
to James C, just a response to our question on KSA. Look, James, we know that we've been working there for an awful long time. We've got our new partner, Al Khafra, helping us. As I say, it is a labyrinthine sort of organization, the National Oil Company, and when you put on top of that the structure within the kingdom, it makes it even more complex. But all I can tell you is that we are putting a huge amount of effort into this, and we wouldn't be doing that if we didn't think it was worthwhile. But we absolutely understand and admit this has not progressed as quickly as we would have hoped. But that doesn't mean we're at the stage where we think we should not be continuing to expend our efforts to do so.
Yeah. Question from Lute. Will green MSAR still need scrubbers? The answer is it depends a little bit on the residue source. From what we've seen from the testing, we believe that we'll have a 20 to 30% reduction also in sulfur dioxide as well as CO2 emissions for our green MSAR product. But so it depends a little bit then what the concentration of sulfur is on the residue. There are certain applications that we can see, such as in the Americas, where the reduction of the reduction in SO2 emissions from green MSAR could result in then the client not requiring scrubbers or not requiring some cleanup equipment. But ultimately, it depends a little bit on the application. But obviously, it's a benefit to reduce both CO2 and SO2 emissions with green MSAR in the future.
Jason, I don't know whether you want to take from William S. It's how many MMUs do we currently have on the ground to allow rapid deployment? And perhaps as part of that, just to explain, our ability to get access to that technology quickly through our long-term relationship with, for example, ENH.
Yeah, on the ground we have two that have been converted for MSAR service, and they're ready to be deployed, as it will be soon. In terms of other units, there are other units available. For specific trial quantities, as we're doing at the moment, we're utilising bitumen terminals if we need to. But obviously, if we need to, we'll procure additional systems as well. But at the moment, that's not the plan.
And I think, I don't know whether you're of the same view, Jason. I think we've got pretty much through most of those questions. If we haven't answered each individual one, I think what we've tried to do is pick up what we think are the thematics in those. Any that we haven't, we will of course update on the Investor Meet Company website, and actually that will get posted as written responses. And as you know, for those that have used it before, where we've actually answered the questions in the meeting, it will take you directly to that part of the meeting to see the question that we've delivered. But perhaps with that, I can just pick up one last question from Bob S, which is, what is a biofuel derivative? And Bob, I'm not going to answer the question, but what I'm going to say is, in Jason's outline, he put forward there that we're going to be doing a launch of that product imminently. So when we do that, we'll actually be giving a little bit more background about that. It is something we really are very excited about. And we look forward to being able to sort of host another of these presentations at the time we do that launch, to give you that bit of background about why we're excited, why we think it's sort of a key opportunity for the business. But also, I think, just to reassure you, this is not something that we're seeking to just kick the can down the lane on this either. We're continuing to progress all the opportunities that we are with MSAR, and on top of that, we've got, we think, a really exciting new opportunity with Green MSAR. So I think with that, thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time to do this. We've been now on this webinar for just over an hour and a half. I hope that everyone feels that we've done our best to answer questions, that we've come to a natural conclusion. It's always clearly a bit more difficult to do that when we're not face to face with you, but that's certainly our impression. We will, though, of course, answer any questions that we weren't able to get round to formally through the Investor Meet Company platform. But thank you very much. And if I could perhaps hand back to Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jason. And thank you to the rest of the board as well for your participation today and obviously asking so many questions. Just as Mike said, and to really reiterate, the company will review all questions submitted today and will publish those answered on the Investor Meet Company platform. Mike, thank you very much for wrapping up there. Could I also just ask investors not to close the sessions? You're automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback. If you've accessed the meeting via the website, the feedback page will appear in front of you. If you've accessed via the email and the link, you'll be asked to log in to submit your questions and feedback. And it is important to the company, so do please take a few moments to do so. So on behalf of QUADRISE Fuels International PLC and Investor Meet Company, thank you very much for attending today's session. That concludes today's event. Good afternoon.
Thank you.